Go out on the Western Pizza guest hotline. You don't want to cook tonight. Western Pizza's got the New Year's Eve specials at all their locations. I know the South store, Spiro runs it, a nice little prime rib action tonight. Call your Western Pizza this evening on New Year's Eve. Justin Dunk from 3DownNation and our Rough Rider radio broadcast team joining us. JD, New Year's Eve. I when I reached out, and I know you're out east, I was like, I don't know if he's going to have the time to fit it in. Appreciate it, though. Thanks so much. How the holiday season been going for you?
It's been great, man. I always got time for you, dude. Just give me a shout. I'll hop on.
Right on. Okay, I was talking to Greg here, Piffles Podcast, and I said, hey, nothing says, powerful NCAA college football bracket game like an 11.5 point spread. Like, does Boise have any chance tonight?
Man, isn't this the beauty of college football? I think they do. Ashton Jeanty and the rest. Like, this is why they play the games, man. I know Penn State's really good, but the guy that I think that everybody needs to focus on in Boise State is the Canadian in the secondary, Ty Benefield, whose dad, David Benefield, obviously played in the CFL and was a pretty good pass rusher himself. Like, he's been great in that secondary for them. It's a physical, fast, hard-hitting team that obviously runs the football. So, yeah, I think they got a chance.
Man, his sister was Natasha Bedingfield. Put out a couple of big hits back in the day. I'm just kidding. And then the other one, though, if that wasn't bad enough, they give an Arizona State. I like, hey, Forks. I love ASU, the campus, more than anything. Minus 12.5. Come on, JD. Like, Texas is a power, though.
They are, but, Quinn Ewers at quarterback, he hasn't really convinced me that he's the dude. Like, if Arch Manning was playing, I'd be like, yeah, sign me up for the Longhorns. But Ewers has been shaky, man.
Okay, let's go Riders, and we're getting people chiming in here on the YouTube and on the text line and all that. They want Jake Maier on the program. And I'm like, can we sign him first? Can we ink him? We talked about that this was an option and a good option for the Riders. They make the trade. Now they have the chance to negotiate. We talked about it yesterday on the show as well. Like, just with the Mark Mueller tie-in there and everything. Like, this is going to get done, right?
I would imagine. So, there's people out there, Barney, that are talking about some of these quarterback trades being paper transactions. Like, why would front offices waste their time? That's just not going to happen in the CFL. So I see this from many factors being a great fit. You mentioned the connection with Mark Mueller. And I think if Jake Maier looks around the Canadian Football League and is to pick a spot to be a backup, there's no better situation than this one. Yeah. Yes, due in large part to Mark Mueller, but for a bunch of other reasons.
Oh, 100%, because you're right. Look around. Edmonton's got their backup. Montreal's got their backup. So why, and considering how much Trevor Harris has missed the last 2 years, it just makes sense to have this as your landing spot. But where do you think he's going to come in at? Because even though Harris gave what he calls a team-friendly deal, Jake Maier is still going to want to get paid too.
He's going to want to, but I think reality has to set in for some of these quarterbacks, like it did for Cody Fajardo, who renegotiated his contract to be the backup with the Elks. And I would imagine, and I'm guessing right now, but it's sort of informed guessing, that his deal will come in, on the high end, maybe $150,000 in hard money, on the lower end, closer to $100,000, but with some heavy playtime incentives in there, that if indeed Trevor Harris does go down, and perhaps for a period of time, let's say 6 games like he was out last year, well, the Riders save that money on the cap, and then that's a way for Jake Maier to actually make money as he plays, so pay as you play, so to speak.
Yeah. Do we get too worried about going over the cap in the CFL? I was thinking about it over the holidays. Is it like, for me, I'm kind of like, who cares? Just go and win.
The last time the Riders won the Cup, they were over the cap. Brendan Taman didn't care because you pay a dollar for dollar fine. Who cares, man? It's a luxury tax. Unless you're talking about going $100,000 over and losing draft picks, which I think the BC Lions are a little bit worried about from last year. Honestly, who cares? Spend the money if you have the money. And the Riders are one of the most stable franchises in the Canadian Football League, have the best fan base. Rider Nation, we know, is not just in Saskatchewan, it's all around the world. So if you really believe that you need to spend that money, go out there and do it. But Barney, I would say this, and you guys have seen lots of sports, that spending crazily doesn't necessarily lead to championships. That's why I think Corey Mace, the foundation that he's laid, the culture, standard is the standard, and the rest is more important than anything else. That yes, you can be calculated and go out there and spend when you need to, like let's say getting Jamarcus Hardrick last year for well over $200,000. That was worth it to help solidify the offensive line and for the leader that he is. But if you're going to go over the cap, don't just do it to do it. Make sure it's worth it.
I got to ask, because this player's near and dear to my heart, Logan Ferland. What are you hearing about his NFL chances? And please tell me he's going to be back in Rider Green next year.
I would imagine he's going to be back unless the NFL interest picks up. He had a workout with the Denver Broncos, and it's just tricky because where he is from an age standpoint. I think if he was a little bit younger and would have had this type of a season, then there would be more NFL interest in him. So, signs point to him being back. And I'll sort of caution fans out there that, remember last year, fellas, we saw Sam Emilus have a handful of NFL workouts, and a lot of people thought he was going to be gone. But Samuel Emilus ended up coming back, and that was a surprise. Now, usually when you see these workouts stack up, that's better and better chances that they're going to get a contract, but it's not for sure. So as it relates to Logan Ferland, I would expect him to be back in green and white. We would all like to see him in the NFL for his own family and personal financial reasons, but I can see him at this moment being back with the Riders.
When you look at the league, Justin, and you know it inside and out probably better than anyone I know, what for people out there, what players league-wide do you think that have a legit shot next year of going down south?
People are going to laugh, but it's punters. Jake Julian had an absolute banger of a season, pun intended. He broke John Ryan's single-season punting average record. That's like gross average, not net. Some punters will point to net and saying, hey, I was trying to coffin corner the guy and all the rest. My boy Rob Maver used to talk about that when he was with the Calgary Stampeders. So I get it. But Jake Julian has a legit NFL-type leg, and I could see him with the workouts that he's stacking up, potentially getting a contract down south. The other one that has a lot of momentum would be Ralph Hawley, who is an interior defensive lineman with the Toronto Argonauts. He just looks like he has an NFL body. I don't think he'll have much trouble making that transition back to playing the American game. And I do expect him to get a contract. Some of the other guys, I think it's a little more up in the air. We've seen multiple workouts, like let's say for Tyrell Ford, a Canadian defensive back, has the athletic profile to be down there. So I could see him getting a contract as well. But sometimes with the NFL guys, you never know. I'll point to Austin Mack last year. He had one workout. It was with the Atlanta Falcons, and he signed a contract with that team. But Samuel Emilus, as I said, had a handful and didn't get a contract. So it's weird the way the NFL works sometimes, and even who they work out and go after.
I gotta ask, where's my schedule? Like this is Saskatchewan. We need to plan our weddings and everything. Yes. We need a schedule.
Yes. I'm with you, man. Based on people that I've talked to around the league, they're hoping to have it out in early January, but I just can't understand. I thought this was something that the CFL was trying to do every year, was to have it out before Christmas, because it's a great Christmas gift, as you mentioned in Rider Nation, to give some tickets and plan around those games as we go into 2025. So I would imagine that there are some holdups that have happened that the league office, Randy Ambrosi, some of the presidents, the board of governors are not necessarily happy about from a business perspective, but they got to get this thing out there. Although you don't want to rush it and mess it up. So, Craig Reynolds was on the program, I think, with you, Barney, in December, and said that there's been some sort of issues with stadium availability, and that teams want to get their preferred home dates and times and days. So I think that's what's playing out right now.
And then we were talking off camera too. You don't know, maybe there's, how the stadiums in Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, BC, for maybe Commonwealth as well, like stadium holds for big concerts that could be rolling through, right? That always plays, and then a lot of people will go, well, it's just one game, and no, then everything's got to be juggled, and how many days off, and then you're going back to back, and there's so much to it. But the before Christmas thing just makes it some sort of snag for sure that was unforeseen is what I would think. Again, I'm just a guy in Regina that doesn't know a heck of a lot. So I
think
have
you'd
to,
be right, my man.
I have to get your take on the PA's report cards. And the one that jumped out, I was reading the 3Down story. The one that jumped out at me and I thought was hilarious was the Winnipeg players about the plane. And then we talked yesterday with Dave Thomas, and I'm like, are they aware that that's not their plane?
Yeah, but I mean, if you're the team, you could, I guess, get a better plane, like hire a better plane. I'm trying to think of the right word, but pay for a better plane to come there. Like, imagine Willie Jefferson, who's like, what, 6'7" or maybe even taller, being jammed in these tiny seats, right? Like, some of the players' comments were saying that they were worse than a single A baseball team plane. I've never been on a single A baseball team plane, but maybe one of the guys with the Bombers has that wrote this comment. It was just surprising to hear because, Winnipeg likes to talk about how they do everything so well. And I think they do top to bottom with the majority of things. But here they got this playing deal and they're not feeding the guys the best on there. That really stuck out to me, I think, not across the board, but with some of the teams, is that we're talking about professional athletes. So you got to feed these guys properly when they're within your facility to expect them to play at the highest level.
It's for part of me, I'm like, at some point, did Winnipeg get one of the Havilland Dash A400s, the small WestJet planes that fly in, that I'm sure that you've been on as well? And are they like bringing Salisbury House in?
Well, all I could picture on the Winnipeg one was the movie Major League, their plane, where you got the guy praying and there's bolts flying off the wing. And
the one thing that I could see, especially in a place like Saskatchewan, though, is access to medical, and maybe that's different things, MRIs. And I think the riders have things pretty buttoned up there, but maybe if guys are used to or expected, because even when guys come from colleges down south, JD, as you know, like some of those big schools, you might as well be an NFL team.
Exactly. There's a difference there. And I would imagine, some of those comments around the league coming from American players, and nothing against them. They're just used to their normal from that standpoint being different, with a whole bunch of trainers, as you said, whether it be NCAA football or the NFL, where if they have even just like a little nick, they're going to get some attention, which as they should. But it's just the facts that the CFL doesn't necessarily have those resources right away. But you look at the comments from Hamilton, and it shows you that it can be done. I was going back and forth with some personnel people and coaches about some of the comments being made. And I said, there's teams out there that can complain or say that they don't have as much money or whatever you want to say, like the Calgary Stampeders, right? Because they were near the bottom of the rankings. But then you look at the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who haven't won a Grey Cup since 1999, but yet they're treating their players at an elite level. Like, it can be done, which was my point, on a CFL budget.
Well, and the thing I noticed reading through a lot of those comments is, especially the teams that did very well, you saw the players talk about how well the families were treated. Like, if you bring people in and treat their families as well as you're going to treat the athletes, the players are going to be happy. Like, happy wife, happy life, right?
Exactly, man. And I don't think that really takes much, right? Just be personable with the families, make sure they're taken care of, have places to sit in the stadium, and just treat them like you would your fans, essentially. Like, treat them well when they come in there. And I think that's simple. And it kind of leads me into a bigger point about the whole report cards. Is what I liked is how the CFLPA went about this. They've talked about some of these things behind the scenes, for years with teams. And I feel like only put it out publicly because they wanted some tangible change in some of those markets. But also, this can help teams too, right? Guys, like if you're the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who tied for the top overall grade, and there's a pending free agent that has some of those bottom tier teams after them too, aren't you going to say, I'm going to go to Saskatchewan, or I might go to Hamilton because I know they're going to treat me better, at least based on last year's report card?
And one thing I noticed is the comments definitely will help mold these teams. So why did no one from Ottawa write a comment? Like, was that a uniform decision that we're not going to bury this team, or what was that about?
That's a good question. And there's just some speculation on my part, but perhaps some of the player reps that are within each team, there's at least 2 on every team, perhaps said, hey, don't necessarily leave a comment here because it's going to go public. Maybe just leave them with me and I'll relay them. But I think somebody or a team, like Ottawa, perhaps didn't have any. Because if you look at the facilities there and the way that they do things, everything's on site and it's done fairly well, perhaps there was no complaints from those players.
Oh, you get that many guys, you get that many human people, someone's got to complain about something. Trust me, as a guy that does a sports radio show, and I'm sure as you know as well, there's always something to complain about.
The guy does the Ryder Collins show. He knows it well enough.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job in 20. You know how hard it is to do that job and come to Saskatchewan and not know some of our town names? Some of our town names are weird. I still get them wrong, and I have been here.
I learned
forever.
that.
What's wrong with Langenberg? That one's easy. There's Beanfate.
It looks
there's
like
Forget.
Forget,
yeah.
Forget's a tough one.
Keep it coming, boys. I need the help.
Yeah, I'm sure we can get somebody to do you up a little cheat sheet next year. When you come on, look at this. Thanks on the Capital Ford Lincoln text line, 701 area code. I didn't know where that was. And it was like, thanks for the great year being my favorite sports talk show. SportsCage is the only sports show I listen to now. I live on an hour southwest of Minot, North Dakota.
Hey,
there we go. See? Look at that. We're getting into North Dakota. Well, I don't know what you got planned for New Year's Eve, but have fun and safe one. And hey, you guys are both on the Boise thing, maybe. Would that be something if that happens this evening?
I think they're going to cover, and I think they're going to win, but I definitely am calling the cover.
Go Bronx!
Thanks, Justin.
Cheers, guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. That is Justin Dunk from 3DownNation, of course, from our Rough Rider radio broadcast, joining us here on the SportsCage. Time for a quick break. When we come back, we're going to recap what happened to the Regina Pat Canadians at the Circle K Championship in Calgary, Alberta. It is the SportsCage, streaming at sportscage.com.